Hi everyone, this is Laurie Meyer from stampedgreetings.com, which is hiding under the bag. And this week we are going to be diving into some tags and tags that you can choose to put on a card if you want to. So this week is tags, next week will be gift cards. And the products that I'm going to be using are from the Fitting Florets collection. I know this bag is a little bright to look at, but I thought it was fun to show the tag on the bag. No pun intended. And I'm just going to take it off so that you can see it a little bit better. Grab that tape. And it's a little tough to see on the white paper, so I'm going to put it on some gray paper. But this is the tag that we're going to make. And also, I made a second tag and I really turned it into a card. I'm going to jump in by showing you some of the products from the Fitting Florets collection. I'm not going to be using all of these. There are 2 stamp sets. This one will be available in the January to May catalog. So that one will be coming out very soon. It is available now to purchase, but you can also get it in January. This is a only while it's available set, framed and festive, and I will be using this in the project that we're going to be making today. I've had a real ball with these. I may show you some other cards that I made using some retired products with a couple of these stamps. So we've got 2 stamp sets. We've got some absolutely fun. These are called gold adhesive backed swirls. And they are not justified in the way they look on camera. They are just fun, gorgeous. So these are available as well. And these are only available while supplies last. So you might want to get your hot little hands on them because they're super fun. Then, of course, we have to have paper. And I was talking to a lady the other day about paper and about how much paper we all have and how much paper we continue to buy. And this is one of those collections of paper that you are going to look at and you're going to say, I can't go without it. So just give in because it will probably end up being in your collection. And it's really, really, really gorgeous. And I'll show you a couple more of those pages as we work through. And then last, but definitely not least, there is an amazing set of dies that comes with this collection. And I'll be honest with you, this is what really sold me because the frames that come that can be used are really, really amazing. And I will be showing you a couple of those today. So the dies that I'm going to use are on this little die holder. And I'll talk about that in a second. There are some other dies that come with the collection. The majority of the ones that are left on the card are the ones that are used with the corresponding stamps, except for this very large frame that also cuts out some hearts. And you can use those hearts as filler. If you made a shaker card, that'd be a really great way to fill up your shaker card. But like I said, the dies that I'm going to use are the ones that are right here. Let me talk really fast about this very, very, very expensive designer die holder. This is an inexpensive, probably $1 frame. It's an 8x10 frame, you know, the ones you can just sit up. I got that at a Walmart or a Dollar General store. And then this is a magnet, one of the ones that has the adhesive back. I love this because I can put that right on the surface where I'm working. And then when I get a die out and I use it, I have very less likelihood of actually losing it if I just pop it right back on that magnetic sheet. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing and very, very inexpensive to do. All right. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to recreate the tag. And in order to do that, I'm going to bring back in the original example, and I'm going to talk you through some of the pieces that I actually made. And we're going to look at the dies as we go. So let me bring back in these fabulous dies. And let's talk about this one first. These two, and we are talking about this one, but both of these work in a really unique way, because when you run this through your die cutting machine once, you get two pieces. And with this piece, you get the outline. So you get what looks like this. And then you get the oval that is in the center. And what's really nice about the oval that's in the center is it has a ridge on the outside. Not super, super easy to see on camera, but it has a really nice ridge. And that fits right inside. So when you pass this through, it's kind of a 2-for-1. It's a 2 dies that you get, and they are really, really nice to work together. The other die that I'm going to be using that is similar is this die. And in a very similar way, you get a 2-for-1. You get the outside kind of ring, and then you get a smaller oval. And I'm just grabbing that really quick. Here's the smaller oval, and you can tell that that fit right inside. It does not have any ridges or anything on it. It is just a regular kind of oval. But it's really nice that you get more than one shape when you put one die through. And I had so much fun cutting these pieces that I got out one of my little containers. And I have the leftover bits, if you want to call it that, when I used this die. And I didn't need to use the inner ovals. I just put them all in here. So I have them all ready to go. When I use the other die and I have the other ovals, well, they're in there as well. And there were a couple of times when I was combining colors and I was using blue or white, and I ended up with all of these extras. I love having these just set aside because I can go through here and I will use these. These came from the designer series paper, and I can use either side depending upon what the design is that I want. So these are really, really handy. And it's kind of fun because as you're, like I said, if you're putting either of the dies through, you're going to get 2 pieces for one, and you can always put the extras aside and use them later. There's some also really nice fauna, leaf, twigs, whatever we want to call them. There's some really, really pretty dies that come in the set as well. And 3 of these are going to be used on the card and the tag that I'm going to make. So you get 2 of these little leaf dies, and they go in opposite directions. There's a really nice big sprig, and I'm going to use 2 of those. And I also cut out another one in white. And as I mentioned, in addition to these dies and the one that we saw that has the hearts, there are some other dies that correspond with the stamps. So these are kind of extra that don't necessarily go with the stamps. So let's look at what we have as far as parts and pieces to kind of replicate this tag. You can see that we have 2 of the dark green sprigs. These were cut out of evening evergreen. And I don't know if you can see or not, but on the I guess they're holly berries, or we'll call them holly berries. I know they're really not, but that's what came out of my mouth. I ended up coloring them with a marker, and the berries, or the circles, are colored with Night of Navy. So I'm just going to get that to the side because I'll probably replicate the same thing. So we've got our fauna, we've got a part of that white piece, and then we have the two leaves. So these are the pieces for the leaves and the little sprigs that I'm going to use. But let's also talk about the major part of the tag, and that is using both of the dies that I just showed you. Just going to get these off to the side for a second. So the first thing I did is I ran this die through using basic white. And I got my basic white outline. I also have a basic white that came out of the middle. I like my tags to look finished. So if I flip this over, you're going to see that on the back, the tag looks finished as well. This is important, and it will make better sense in just a minute. You don't see the other side of the designer series paper. You see white. I'm going to use this piece to put on the back of my tag. That's also going to allow me to write to and from and any other message that I might want to put on there. And I won't be competing with the designer series paper. So I am going to use that. The other thing that I cut for this tag is I cut out this piece. And you'll remember that that is the part that is kind of the center, the frame. All right, so when I cut that out, I got one piece of white that's going to be in basic white. Let's take a look at the back, because I also, again, I want the back to look like it's finished. So on the back, I also put a piece of that basic white, and that is going to be from a second cut of that piece of paper. All right. Now, the middle, where I have my sentiment. This is where I brought in a piece of the designer series paper. And when I did that, I used a piece that is in the collection. You can see this is the one that I cut. Let me just get this out of the way here for a second. Isn't that gorgeous? And that's going to end up being the side that you're going to see on the card a little bit better. But to me, this isn't a traditional Christmas design, although it has some really pretty Christmas motifs in here. And it just, you can transform it very, very easily into a Christmas card or a Christmas tag. But I didn't want this on the back of the tag. And I already told you that what we're going to do is we're going to cover that back with a piece of white. But I did decide that I wanted to put my sentiment onto this piece of designer series paper. I just thought it gave a little bit of interest with a background that was already created. It's kind of like cheating because this piece is already designed. I don't need to stamp the background. All I need to do is stamp the foreground. And for that, I used the Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas stamp from the Framed and Festive collection. And I grabbed my Night of Navy and I stamped Night of Navy right over that. You really do want to think about a darker color if you are going to be stamping on designer series paper. You just need it to really stand out. And one thing that I appreciate so much that Stampin' Up! Is doing, and forgive me, these are extra pieces, but in the back, when you look on any kind of designer series paper package, all the colors that are featured in that collection are listed. This is a great way to go into your stash and find paper that corresponds with the colors in the designer series paper so that you can use them, and also your inks so you can bring out those colors. And I just want to tease you for a moment because I'm going to be making some more of these tags, and I found a couple more combinations of designer series paper that I'm going to do. So think about this. You've got this gorgeous pink, and imagine that that would be the color behind the sentiment. So you've got the pink, and then I'm going to put it on this side that I'm going to call that, I don't know if it's mistletoe, it's probably not. It looks Christmassy to me. Can you tell I'm not really a horticulturist, but I'm going to combine the pink and the other side of this paper, the evergreen, the evening evergreen and the soft succulent, and I think that will be gorgeous. And then another combination that, again, it's not the traditional Christmas, but this is gorgeous. And if you look at the other side, this is a little bit darker pink. But again, if I use a dark ink to do my sentiment, and then I have this piece for the sentiment and this piece in the background, it's going to be beautiful. So this collection really challenged me to think outside the box of traditional colors for Christmas, to come up with some just slightly different combinations. All right, so I have my pieces all set, and I'm just going to go ahead and talk through how to do this. And there are a couple of little tricks and tips that I'm going to share along the way. So let's get our pieces out. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the oval that I stamped on. I don't want that on the back. Maybe you do, and if you do, leave it. I just wanted some place that I could write on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to adhere these two together. This is going to do two things. It's going to strengthen the tag itself. And like we've already talked about, it's going to give me that plain background so that I have something that I can just put a message on. The other thing that I hope you noticed is that when I stamped the greeting, I purposely didn't center it vertically. I made sure that I pushed it up just a little bit because I knew I was going to be putting the designs down at the bottom. The stamps and the frames that are part of this collection allow you to do that. They work together really, really well. And they're purposely designed so that you can fit the sentiments kind of off to the right, up a little bit, and figure out where you want to put the additional decoration. So we put these two together. Now, believe it or not, I'm going to start from the back. And the first thing I want to do is I want to attach one of the ovals to the back of the sentiment. And here's why. Let's just look at this real quick. When I put these together, you're going to be able to see that there's just a little bit of that white that's showing around the outside. Well, let's think about where we're going. We've got this piece that was cut from this die. The oval where we put our sentiment was also cut from that die. I want to be able to attach this piece on top of what I'm building. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if I have a little bit of overlap, a little bit of area where on that what's showing is white, where I can put some glue. Otherwise, I would be trying to glue this and it's the same size as the center. So that's just not going to work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and attach this piece, which is the oval from the smaller die. Trying not to get glue all over my hands, but I will. I know I will. And I'm just going to, it doesn't matter if this is upright or not. I'm just going to go ahead and put that on the back. And then I'm going to move it and turn it over. And this is where I'll try and get it so I have a little bit of white, especially on the sides. And this is going to help me get a kind of a finished look on the back as well. So see how I have that little bit of white on the side? That's now going to allow me to have enough room to glue this piece on. So if you're working with dies that are not from this set, let's say you've got a set of nested dies and they're ovals or maybe circles, you're going to have to use not the next size die necessarily. You might have to use a die size up so that you have a little bit of room around the edge to get that piece on the front. And just play around. You'll figure out what is going to work for you. So all I'm doing here is I'm putting glue just where there's some white. I don't want to get it on the designer series paper because that's going to end up showing through the front for a minute, but then I'm going to hide that as well. All right. So I'm just going to take my die, the die cut, and this is a puzzle piece because it fits right around that piece of designer series paper that I've cut out. And now, and don't worry, I will be attaching that in just a second. It's held. Now it's not held on the bottom. It's not held on the top, but don't worry, it will be because we're going to take a second piece of the die cut that we used on the back and we're going to put that on the front, and that's going to help get everything kind of pulled together. I love these frames. They are very versatile. They're very easy to use, and the combinations are pretty infinite. You know, you can use different colors, different thicknesses, designer series paper or cardstock, and come up with some really, really pretty combinations. And for this, I'm just eyeballing it. I'm using liquid glue, which is allowing me a little bit of grace to move it around. And now that I have that top glued on, that top is connected because there's glue underneath the piece that's going around the outside. But let's kind of do a what if. Let's say that you had an oval that was a particular shape. And let me get one. Let me not just talk through this. So here's an oval, and it happens to be the size of what I've got in the middle, different color. And then let's say that we have a couple of the edges, and these are a little bit bigger. So I don't need to go through, if I have a set of oval dies, I don't necessarily have or need to go through that outside frame. Just find something that is a tad bit bigger. And it's kind of hard to see, but it's a tad bit bigger. And on the front and on the back, you can attach those pieces. They're going to attach together and they're going to overlap on the edges, and it will give you a really nice clean finish. So you don't need these dies. Look in your stash. I guarantee you're going to have something that will work for you. All right, so here we are. We are building things up. So now we're going to start in on some of our little sprigs. And I'm just dry fitting these, meaning I'm not going to glue anything just yet. And I'm not going to glue it because I'm also going to do just a tiny bit of marker. And I am prying up the edge just a little because I want to put the end of the little sprig underneath that white piece. But before I do anything, I did like the way it's very, very subtle. I did like the way the blue berries, flowers, whatever they are, kind of showed up. So all I'm going to do is take out my Night of Navy marker, and I'm going to come in and only where those little circular berry flowers are, I'm going to add a little bit of color. And it's very, very subtle. It would be much more dramatic, obviously, if the cardstock were a lighter color and or the ink that I'm using were a little bit darker or more of a contrast. But I think it adds just a tad of interest on this. And it also combines the colors that are in the designer series paper, which led me to using those. So what I'm going to do is I'm kind of mimicking the one that's on the left. And what that's going to mean is that I'm going to tuck one up underneath right in there. And in order to do that, I am going to snip off the bottom just a tad because I don't need all of that. It would actually go a little further than the frame. Put a little bit of glue on that and just bring that up and kind of tuck it in. Each one of these obviously is going to look a little different because inevitably when you make them, you're going to have a little bit of a different angle or maybe be in a little different mood depending upon what you want to do. And I'm making sure that when I tack these down, that I have them so I can still read the sentiment when everything is all said and done. And then I'm going to grab the white that I used, and you can see I snipped it off. And I snipped it off right about here. So I'm going to do the same thing. And I like this white. It is just, it really, in my mind, and I played with the colors a lot when I was putting this together. I started out with some really, really bold colors, and it was too much. It was drowning out the simplicity of the tag, and it wasn't looking elegant. It was looking just overwhelming. But when I add that white back in, I think it really helps the green pop again. And then we have a couple of green. These are done in soft succulent. And I'm just gonna take a little bit of their stems off so I have a smaller piece to work with. Add a little glue. I've told you this before. I am not a fan of glue dots. I find them, at least for me, to be something that does not necessarily hold. I would not be comfortable using glue dots on this project. There are too many layers, and that's why I'm using the liquid adhesive. I feel much, much more confident in this. So I'm just adding these so that I can still see the different colors, but I can also see each color individually. And then we've got a couple more things to finish this off. And one is I always forget the name of these, gold adhesive backed swirls. And they are really pretty. They're kind of flat too. They're not as flat as the brass brushed butterflies tongue twister, but they are flat enough that you could easily put these on a card and not worry about mailing. That would not be an issue at all. And I'm going to kind of mimic what I did over here on the other one. I thought it'd be kind of fun to tuck one up underneath the green. And then I usually like to put one so that it is hanging between any kind of color and the frame. We have one more thing to add to this card, or tag, excuse me, and we will be all set. And that is a piece of the gold Simply Elegant trim. This is really, really awesome trim. Very, very, very easy to use. And I'm just going to cut a piece off and going to double that in length. Put that up underneath the top of that die cut and just thread that through. Kind of pinch it a little bit just to make sure that it's going to stay where I want it to, and then tie that off and trim off the edge, just the end, just a little bit. So there we go. Two tags that are very, very, very similar, if not almost identical. Pretty quick to make. And if you get into a rhythm where you have a lot of these die cuts that are already done, you could very easily put these together in a pretty quick fashion. What I like about tags is you can use these as tags, or if you don't want to use these as a tag, if you'd like to do something different, you can start with the same basic design and make a card. So I'm going to show you quickly how this card was made, because it's pretty much done in the same way as the tag was, just a couple of differences. So let's kind of talk through it as we go. This is a regular A2 card. It's on basic white, and that piece of basic white is standard 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4 on the 8.5 inch side. So I've got my card base. And then we talked about how Stampin' Up! Is providing a list of the colors that are in the designer series paper. So I looked at those colors, and I love blues. Blues definitely, to me, work incredibly well for Christmas cards. So I pulled out a piece of Night of Navy. That's what that piece is. And I don't want to lie to you on what the measurement is, so I'm going to triple check it. It is 4 by 5 1/4. So 4 by 5 1/4, just to give a little bit of a border around the edge. And then I chose the designer series paper that is the same as I used for the sentiment, but I'm going to use the back on here as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and build a frame here. So this piece measures 3 3/4 by 5. So 3 3/4 by 5. And what I'm simply going to do here is I'm going to just layer this up. And this is also a pretty quick card. It comes together fast. There's some of the guesswork taken out if you pay attention to the colors that are in the designer series paper. I'm just going to try and get that kind of in the middle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the direction that I want this piece to go. And it's not because the design is vertical. It's because I want to make sure that on the outside, where I'm going to see the designer series paper, that there's going to be some white, because I want this white that I'm adding to the front to pick up the white in the back. So here I've got some white up in the upper right, and I've got some white down here, and I'm okay with that. So that's the direction that I'm going to go ahead and put it. And I was paying more attention to the color that complements the pieces that I'm going to put on than the other colors that are in the paper, just to try to plan a little bit as far as how I want that to look. I'm just going to go ahead and put that right on top. So super easy so far, just layering some paper. Well, now let's look at what dies I used and what I cut out to make this card. I used this die to cut out the piece that is going to be the larger frame. I used the other die to cut out this piece that is going to be in front of that frame, the one that we just looked at. And just like on the other card or on the tag, and this is the exact same piece, these two are the exact same thing. They were first stamped on designer series paper, and then this die was used because that's going to be the middle. It has that nice little ridge that's on there. So those are the die cut frame pieces that we're going to use on this card. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring in this piece and I'm going to lay that directly onto the front of the card. And what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try to get that so that it's kind of even. And just going to grab my Stamparatus, which is a wonderful tool for this, because it's going to give me a grid where I will be able to try to get this kind of in the middle. So I'm just going to put my card on here and I'm trying to center it. So I've got a center line that's going to be in the middle, and that's going to help me figure out the best place to put my frame. I'm going to add just a couple of dabs of glue. I don't need to add a lot. And I'm going to try to move that glue around just a little bit because I want to have a thin layer so it doesn't ooze out. Oozing would not be good. And I also just saw that there's a little piece that did not get punched out. So I'm going to try and find something really quick because that will bother me. And there we go. All right. That little guy, stubborn little piece. Okay. So now I can see where my top and the bottom is and try to get that kind of lined up. And as best as I can. And I don't need to worry about the other parts of that frame having glue. You know, this doesn't have glue. It's just these 4 parts here because we're going to be layering on top. The oval that I used for my sentiment is going to fit in here perfectly because it was die cut out of the middle of this die. So I already know exactly where that one needs to go. I'm just going to add some glue to the back of that and go ahead and tuck that in. And it's kind of funny. My husband is very averse to the blue-green combination. Well, we got a lot of blues and a lot of greens going on here, and I think it works. And now I'm going to take the other piece, and this is Balmy Blue. I don't think I mentioned that. Another of the colors in the designer series paper. So I found some Balmy Blue cardstock and use that to cut out my frames. And I'm just going to put this right around my sentiment, but also make it look a little more finished. I think that's really what I like about these frames the most, is that when you put it all together, it really does look nice and polished and finished. And then to do the little sprigs on the bottom, I'm going to do pretty much what I did on the other card, or I keep calling the tag a card on the other project. And the one thing that I will say on this is that you do want to pay attention to the edges of your card. You don't want the pieces to go beyond. You wouldn't want to put anything down like that because you would never get it into an envelope. And on this one, I'm not going to really worry about tucking it up underneath the frame because I'm going to put a gem on the top and it will look just beautiful. So just kind of tacking that down. I'm going to go ahead and grab the other piece. And again, I just think these look so elegant and white. They just look clean and they really bring out the background and make it really, really striking. And that one I'm going to have to turn just a smidge to make sure it stays on my card. There we go. And then I have two of the smaller leaves. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to cut that a little smaller because that's going to be a little too big. You will find that when you're putting this together that you're going to have to trim some of these pieces, and it may be a little different each time you do it just because your cards are going to end up being a little different, especially if you don't do them all at the same time. When you angle the little pieces of die cuts down at the bottom, that's going to work a lot better. So I can still bring that in just a tad. There we go. All right. And then I will add in my little leaves and we'll put a gold sprig in. And it will be beautiful. And I've got glue all over my fingers, but hey, I guess that's meaning that it's successful. If you don't have glue on your hands, dimensional wax paper all over your house, what else? Ink all over your body, you have not been successful. Let's just be honest. That is the mark of whether you've had a successful stamping day or not. And on this one, I'm just going to add one of these little swirls right in the middle of all of those pieces of white. And then I'm kind of going rogue. I remember years ago, there was a lot of jewelry and there were watches, all sorts of things that had multicolored metals. And I loved that. I really, really, really did. So I thought, you know what? I am not sticking to one color. So I got out my rhinestones and we're doing silver and gold on this. It's just, that's how it's going to be. So I'm popping a couple of gems on here. And then the last little bit that we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit more of that elegant, simply elegant trim. And I already cut this or made it into a double bow. And all I'm going to do on this is I'm going to attach it right up to the top. And the way I do this is I use the shimmery crystal effects. It's a very, very good glue, as well as being a very fun embellishment. And I'm going to take that and get some of that crystal effects right on the back of where that bow is tied. You don't need a lot. It will dry in a really pretty, sparkly clear. So it's not going to be, it won't show, it won't be obtrusive at all. And I'm going to put that right up at the top, right there. And then I'm going to grab a block. And this is the hard part. You kind of drop the block. I'm just going to see if I can yeah, it's going to stay. So I'm going to just drop the block and that's going to dry. And I'll let that sit for a couple minutes. And I'm going to bring that off camera because that is exactly what I did to make this card. So I hope I have inspired you to try these die cuts, the paper, the swirls, and to, take some time and make some really, really pretty tags and cards that might be a little untraditional, non-traditional. I guess it's non-traditional in terms of Christmas colors. And I will be making some more. I'm going to show you an idea. I made a card, a slimline card, with the Merriest Moments stamp set and dies. And I'm going to pinch the poinsettia stamps and dies from that collection. And I'm going to add that on one of these, actually probably both. And I think when I do that, I will probably use the paper that I talked about before. So some really beautiful poinsettias in these colors, and then the backgrounds will be these colors. So I think that will be super, super fun. And I will be posting those once I get them done. The other thing that I am going to do, and I had hoped that I would have this done to show today, but I have not yet, is I'm going to make a shaker tag. And that shaker tag is going to be done with some layers from the die, from this die. And I'm going to layer these up. And right now I've got probably 6 or 7 of them. It's just the right thickness. That's going to be just thick enough. I'm going to put some acetate behind this. Maybe use the same sentiment, maybe not. And I'm going to make a shaker tag. And that will be a double kind of a tag and an ornament. And I will post that when I have that done as well. I did also mention that I wanted to share with you a few cards that I made using the stamps. And the stamps that I'm talking about are the framed and festive stamps. I have enough Christmas stamps. We all have enough Christmas stamps, but darn it, when you see these, you're going to say, no, I don't have enough Christmas stamps. And I grabbed some retired designer series paper and I made a couple of fun cards with these. And this is a design that I shared on a recent stamp club. So if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll be able to find the post that will show you how to make these. But so cute, so cute. And then also I used some other retired designer series paper and made this one as well. Very, very fast, very, very fun sentiments. A lot of good use. But for now, I leave you with some, again, I hope inspiration for some tags, some cards. And next time that we get together, we will be all about gift cards. And we will be making some very, very fun gift cards. All right. Well, until then, Inky hugs, and I will see you soon. Thanks.